Bob Harris. We're getting ready to use paper stencil on our integrally colored slab. Just a few conditions to be concerned about. Temperatures are well in excess of 90 degrees, plus we have the sun baking against this metal building. It's really setting this slab up fast, so you've got to work quickly. Or the preference is to pour in the coolest part of the day. Right, yeah, line the straight line right up there. Right, good. Okay, our preferred tool here is a pair of scissors for cutting the stencil. Important to have the stencil lie flat. Ron's just going to embed that stencil so it lays flat. There you go. See how it's actually pushing the stencil into the paste of the concrete. Another concern is this wind. You see it's very windy out, so it's going to very rapidly dry that surface out. Good. Good. Right. Now what's important is you'll notice that we don't have standing bleed water on the surface. You don't want to apply the stencil when you have a lot of bleed water that's risen to the surface. So right now you can see Ron's doing a good job. He's embedding that stencil into the paste. And this is what you're looking for, just so it embeds, because the step after we've got our stencil laid is we're going to apply a color hardener. And if the stencil's not laying down flat, the color hardener will wick or bleed underneath. So this is an important step to embed that stencil. All right, we've just about got our first layer of our stencil rolled, embedded into the paste. Again, when it's warm, you've got to work quick so it doesn't get away from us. What I want to do before I use this color hardener is I want to turn it over and roll it. Turn it upside down. What happens is when it sits in the bucket, it becomes condensed. And when I put my hands in there, I don't want to throw a big clump on there. So you want to, in essence, fluff the hardener up. So what I'm doing now is I'm applying my first application of color hardener just carefully so I don't put it underneath the stencil, okay? I might even choose to use an accent color on this. In other words, we call that a flash color, just to get kind of a nice antique look. Now I'm just going to simply get an accent color, and what we're using is a kind of a medium gray color hardener color. Now this is, in my opinion, what really kind of separates an average stencil job to, say, an extraordinary stencil job, is by marbling some different colors. So one thing I don't like to see, and this, in my opinion, kind of ruins a stencil job, I'll see craftspeople or artisans, when it comes to antiquing with what we call a flash hardener, they have this tendency to take a handful of it and go across the slab almost like it's in a streak, okay? Like a bolt of lightning. And in nature, that's not organic. That would never happen from stone to stone. What I mean by that is you would never see a black streak going from this stone across this stone into this stone. It doesn't look natural, so don't flash in a streak like this. Flash very randomly. We've worked our color hardener in. It's now time to texture, and there's a couple ways that you can texture. This is called a texture roller. Some people prefer to use the texture roller. As you can see, it just imparts a light texture to it. If you're using this type of roller, I like to cross it up, meaning I'll run it one direction like this, and then perhaps even come at a diagonal or at a 90 degree. If you're not careful when using this, you can see this has a very distinct texture on it. You'll see that repeating pattern if you don't cross it up when you roll, and it just doesn't look natural. So make sure you cross it up when you use the texture roller. And if you don't prefer the roller, the seamless texture skins work great over the top of stencil. I actually quite like this because it leaves a very natural texture, and if you do it properly, you won't see a repeating pattern. And this is just right. Perfect for applying texture. On our stencil application, it's time to remove the stencil. Now, what are we looking for when it comes time to remove the stencil? Typically, any of the cement paste that's accumulated on the top of the stencil should flake off. So what I mean by that is you look, see how it pops off? It just pops right off. That's a good indication that it's time. In other words, if we lift the stencil and the cement paste is still wet, it's too soon. And if you remove the stencil too soon, it could fray or fracture the edge, which is not always a bad thing. On some patterns, I almost prefer that we fray or fracture the edge to make it look more authentic or realistic. So what is the right time? Certainly the temperature is going to determine or dictate that. Roughly 3 hours has transpired since we put our texture skin over the top of this, and Brad's going to go ahead and demonstrate removing. Now watch over there what happens when he lifts it. Do you see how the little paste flakes off? That's the indication. That's what you're looking for there. It's a great example. It just flakes right off of the stencil. So this is a perfect time to remove this stencil. So you notice how it flakes right off the top, and we see the pattern, the underlying pattern. Now you'll remember we talked about integral color. You'll notice the grout joints, the nice brown or tan color, that's the actual integral color.